fake news, alternative facts, or just plain spin. The current climate of distrust is making it hard to sort out what's real when it comes to news. But where does all this come from? And in the age of constant information, what qualifies as fake news? Well, for more, we're joined by Jeffrey Dvorkin, Director of Journalism Program at the University of Toronto. Good to have you back.
Good morning.
I wanted to dig down into this for a little bit because I feel like there's a lot of confusion around it. Fake news, alternative facts, lies, propaganda. First of all, how do you define fake news?
Well, fake news is basically bad journalism, and it is with the deliberate intent to deceive. And there are ways in which the news consumer can check out if a website is basically lying. And one of the ways, the easiest way, is to go to the bottom of the homepage and look at the About Us and click on that. If nothing happens, it's pretty fake. And the other way is the Contact Us click point. If you click on that and nothing materializes, again, it's fake news.
We've seen a lot of stories come up in the last year and a half, but when did sort of fake news enter the general conversation?
Well, I have a slightly different take on that. I think that there's a sense that it's a little bit overblown now, and there's a lot of anxiety about this. And a number of media organizations which got caught out in the last election in the United States, in the referendum in the UK, are now turning around and saying, it couldn't have been our fault. It must be the fault of these terrible people who've been spreading lies and mis and disinformation. I'm not sure that's entirely true. A recent study done by the Columbia Journalism Review showed that people who read fake news, it's a very small percentage. Most people still go to reliable sources of information. So we have to be careful that we don't panic about all this stuff.
I feel like for a lot of people, where it became muddied was when now President Trump, called out a CNN reporter and said, you are fake news. They are a news organization. They do report news, but the president calling it fake, is he saying that they lie, that their facts are wrong?
Well, no, what he's saying is rather an old way of dealing with mainstream media, which is to put people like you and me, to a certain extent, on the defensive. The worst thing that someone could say to us is, we're biased. So in order to combat that, we say, well, no, we're not. We're actually doing a good job. It puts us on our back foot, as it were. And this has been a tactic that's been used by some advocacy groups for quite a long period of time, and they found out that it works. This is the way Trump got elected, by putting the media on the defensive, and the way he campaigned is the way he's going to govern. We have to be careful that we're not, if we want to be watchdog journalists, we can't be barking after every passing car. So we have to kind of calm down, do a good job, make sure that our news organizations are properly resourced so that we can handle these allegations.
I'm going to use a couple of examples. We've got websites like The Rebel and Mother Jones. They have a certain political slant or a lens. But while for the most part, what they're saying, can that be called fake news, or is it just reporting through a different lens?
Well, I think we have to be very careful to distinguish between fact-based reporting and opinion. And there is value in having opinion, but it should always be secondary to the fact-based reporting that most media organizations engage in. If we are just involved in argumentation and polemics, that's hardly serving our audiences as citizens first and consumers of information second.
Journalism schools like yours used to teach the facts are the facts. That was sort of the plumb line for everybody. But then we have the introduction of alternative facts.
Right, which is a really slippery, sneaky idea that Kellyanne Conway has introduced as a meme. We have to be careful that we don't start chasing after this all the time. If we do our jobs well as journalists, as teachers, then we help our students and our audiences understand how to distinguish between real and fake.
Which can be very tricky to do. There was a study done out of Stanford University. 80% of their students fell for a fake news story. These are people who are reading various journalism sources all of the time. What's the psychology of people saying, I'm going to believe that? I'm going to read this story and choose to believe something that may or may not be true or partially true?
It's called bias confirmation. It is that we want to believe things that we want to believe. And some media organizations, including fake news outfits, understand this very well. At a time when things are really complicated, we want to go to something that is confirming what we believe rather than informing us. And so media organizations, mainstream media organizations, need to be very careful in helping people understand the differences between the real and the opinion, between fact-based reporting and editorializing.
Jeffrey, always good to have you here.
My pleasure.
To put some clarity around this issue for us.